Hello, everyone. We are just getting ready for our Why Intermodal Summit Day 1. We just want to give everybody just a couple of seconds to get situated and to join us for this live. We have so much great information for you today. And of course, we've got Day 2 happening same time next Thursday as well, which I'm super excited about. So we're just going to give it a couple more seconds to make sure everybody can join us, and then we will get started. We've already got Dylan from Austin, Texas, and Natasha from Oregon here with us today. So let's get started. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream brought to you by the Intermodal Association of North America, IANA. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain and Blended, and I will be your moderator today. Today, I'm honored to be joined by three members of IANA's board of directors: Treasurer Tom Williams, Group Vice President of Consumer Products at BNSF Railway, representing the Rail Division; Board Vice Chair Shelli Austin, President at Intech Freight and Logistics 3PL Division; and Donna Lemm, Chief Commercial Officer at IMC Company's Motor Carrier Division. So I am welcoming them to join me up on stage now. Welcome. I know Tom is having some challenges right now, so he'll be joining us in just a few moments. But welcome, ladies, Shelli and Donna. So glad to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So happy to be here.
All right. So we will be taking questions throughout the live stream. So make sure to add your questions in the comment section. Plus, use the comment section to let us know where you're tuning in from, your thoughts, and make sure to network with others. Plus, if you like what you hear today, these topics and more will be discussed at Expo happening in Long Beach, California, September 12th through 14th. And we're going to put that registration link in the comments as well. So we're going to be talking all about intermodal today. And now the last few years have thrown a lot of challenges our way, and we continue to be tested by disruption and obstacles daily. As an industry, we've been thrown into conversations around how we can improve our flexibility, our efficiency, and our collaborative networks, as well as how we can reduce costs and continue to address sustainability issues that can't wait until we have a spare minute. It seemed like almost an impossible ask at times, but it's important to remember that there is a network already in place that can help with all of these issues when it comes to transportation in our businesses, and that is intermodal. So today we're going to be taking a closer look at exactly why intermodal should be part of our logistics strategies and how it can help us. So let's kick it off then by framing the discussion with some context. What does the landscape of intermodal industry look like right now? What are you seeing from your industry perspective? Shelli, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would say I'm surprised my hair's not sticking out on end, because we have gone from one end of the spectrum to the other and back around in full circle again. I'm sure Donna would say the same thing. Intermodal right now, just as any other mode of transportation, has been crazy. It's been very constrained, very exciting at the same time, but it's all about being flexible, and really there's something new every single week that we're dealing with. So, we can't, it's not the norm that used to be. I know that's kind of a buzzword, norm, and what was the norm, what's the new norm, and that's really not what it is now. But it really used to, it had some consistency, the intermodal market did, and you could kind of proactively manage different things. And now that consistency is not there. Now you have to be very nimble and flexible and just move very quickly when certain things come about. So I would say right now, compared to a couple months ago, capacity was really, really tight, and it was very hard to get anything done. Things in the capacity realm have kind of evened out, and it's a little bit better on the capacity side. But don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of challenges that we're all working with to try and bring all that together and get things back into a really good, well-oiled machine.
Absolutely. So many things coming at us as supply chain professionals, and so many different things to think about. Donna, what's it looking like from your perspective?
I think Shelli gave us a good purview of what's going on. We are challenged out here. I mean, we talk every day about our gateways and our ports and how things are so tough. Well, guys, the truth is that everything just rolls in just like the tide. And we are so connected. We are a system. and the system is challenged. And so intermodally, we're no different. Our railroads are cautioning us. We do see some metering going on. We see some challenges that they're saying, hey, make sure that you can play catch at the end of this rainbow. And by that, we got to consider that these trains are getting longer, just like our ships are getting bigger, our trains are getting longer. And so do we have the capacity when those long trains do continue to arrive and they do bunch? What can we do? We see an imbalance of assets. And this is also very real in life. I mean, we can't just continue to move things in without at the same time balancing out. And so what we're doing right now after 2 years is really feeling the impact of that imbalance. I like the words that you use, Shelli. You're right. We need to be flexible. We need to be nimble. Look, we've learned we can't just sit still, and we always have to have plan B. So I hope that helps, Sarah. I think to say we're challenged is so spot on. To say that there's opportunity in the challenge is also something that we want to talk about today.
Yeah, have plan B, C, D, E. I mean, I could go through the alphabet, right?
Yes,
I think that's
absolutely.
what the last 2 years have kind of shown us is that we need all of these backup plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those key challenges being faced by, your company and also the industry sector. I think a couple of them that we haven't mentioned is labor shortage and maybe some driver shortage as well, right? And so as we reflect on an unexpected and unprecedented couple of years, but we look forward to 2023, what are the challenges that we've seen? What do you think are the challenges that are going to continue? Shelli, sorry.
No, you're fine. So the challenges that we have seen, Donna mentioned a few of them, which is great. So, boy, I could tell you that we've probably seen every challenge. I don't want to say that because we may have, the locust come next. But, it's just been, everybody talks about chassis issues, and that may not be the number of chassis that are the issue, which is kind of the misnomer out there. As Donna mentioned, we're all connected. Intermodal is very cool. I think intermodal it's so fun because it's this huge puzzle, right? And there's all these puzzle pieces that you're putting together, and you have to have collaboration between all of those units to make it work really, really well. And when it does work really, really well, it's probably the best mode of transportation out there, cost-wise, sustainability, efficiencies. But it all has to be working on the same path. And so, some of the challenges that we have seen, Donna mentioned, imbalance of equipment. I mentioned the chassis. Hey, just record heats. Those are challenges in the intermodal space, right? Because if you're moving commodities that can't handle the record heats, then you have to be flexible and do something else again there. And we're looking on hurricane season. We've got potential strikes that everybody's talking about. You've got different things that are just disrupting the whole concept of what we're trying to put together and everybody's trying to work on together. So I think, those are some of the challenges that we have seen previously. And then looking forward, I don't think it's going to be much different. I think it's going to be just a newer and different version of some of the same challenges that we've seen. I think that if we just need to continue to work on how we, free up that equipment. To me, it's all about it's turns, it's quick turns. And that's what everybody doesn't get, because everything within our nice little puzzle, it all is about moving things through quickly and efficiently. If there's any kind of cog in the wheel, then that just is a domino effect for everything else.
Such a domino effect. And they're huge domino effects that people don't really realize, right?
Yeah.
And affects all sorts of things like customer experience, right? Which is huge on retaining some of your customers that could cost a lot as well. So Donna, what do you think? And what do you think about, the labor shortages that we're all facing right now? And what is that going to, sort of look like? I mean, I know I'm kind of asking you to get out your crystal ball, but...
Well, I do agree with Shelli that much of what we've seen will continue. I mean, let's talk first about, for me and for us and for our industry, I think that 3 things come to mind: labor shortages, land shortages, and equipment shortages, right? And equipment problems. And you asked specifically, Sarah, about labor. I mean, we've seen recently many of our drivers coming back to our fleet. We are very, very encouraged by that. But at the same time, we continue to build ways that we can capture and hold that driver and elevate that driver, making sure the driver is always moving. And so one thing that we were able to do, and we will continue to do and perfect as we go forward, how do you find ways to keep drivers moving? Mm-hmm. We believe in this concept called peel piles, not new. We have re-looked at peel piles, trying to elevate even that concept for fluidity purposes. And so what are we doing? We're looking at our terminals, our port terminals, and several of our rail terminals, and we're working with them so that as that train comes or as that ship or vessel discharges, how do we have our drivers waiting? How do we aggregate freight so that they don't have to make special piles for 50 and 25 containers? How do we aggregate that and make this more, shall we say, attractive, easier, simplify, all of those things that we're trying to do. So the issue of labor is real. We all even feel them, even in our corporate offices, it's real. This appeal for drivers, always trying to figure out how we can make that driver experience better, stronger. And, what we've seen over the past month is very, very positive, with more drivers coming in and joining our fleet organization. But this will continue, Shelli. You're right. I mean, the issue of land, what are we going to do? We can't create more space. How do we work more efficiently in the space that we have? And for us as a company, it has meant investment. We have had to find ways that we could go out and strategically find container yards and space so that we could help alleviate and evacuate terminals, stage and hold, as this labor issue impacts all of our warehouses and all of our customers' ability to kind of move that inventory, right? So it's all, as we say, a system and connected. And these are some of the things that we've been able to do in reaction and proactively based on what's going on out there.
Well, and that's really what we need to do, right? Is we need to be proactive rather than reactive. And that's what the last couple of years have really shown us. So, James, I see your question. We are going to hold on to that question till a little bit near the end of the discussion. And if anybody else has any questions, make sure to put those in those comments. So the challenges, like you've both been saying, have been coming at us, right? Thick and fast. But the pandemic has really helped to remind us of the importance of that proactiveness, right? Instead of that reactiveness that we just spoke about. And so live streams like this one and events like the IANA Intermodal EXPO are so important, because when we really dive into intermodal, it quickly becomes clear how it can help to address so many of these challenges and deliver tangible benefits. So let's explore those. Let's start with a really important one right now, as we continue to struggle with the backlogs that you mentioned and that efficiency, right? How can intermodal bring efficiency to the transport of cargo? Shelli?
Yeah, so intermodal is designed to bring those efficiencies, right? So as I mentioned earlier, if everything's working well, now, and don't get me wrong, that intermodal's got its challenges as well. And when it has its challenges, that's when it doesn't hit that efficiency level or that price point that you want to see. But what it can do to help bring everything through the DCs. So the nice thing about intermodal is it has sustainability and a sufficient capacity. So if you think about intermodal, there's a lot of different things that you can do with the intermodal, whereas you're looking at one truck, one trailer for over the road, right? So intermodally, you can have a lot of different containers, you can have a lot of different options, and it's all going on the rail. And you have drivers that can move those different pieces onto the rail versus being stuck in that one silo of just having one truck and one trailer option. So that's one of the things that I think intermodal brings to the table, is all those different options to keep the product moving. If you have a constraint on one size of equipment, you can jump to another size of equipment. If you have a constraint on, one type of truck, you can jump to another type of truck. You have all these different options to pick and put together and keep the product moving. So that's one thing. And then the infrastructure, right? The railroad infrastructure is perfect for keeping this moving, and it's not landlocked. It's not per se, not like the roads are, right? So that there's so much room to grow, and there's such a great infrastructure within the railroad setup that intermodal gives you that opportunity to expand and grow with that. the green efficiencies. I know that doesn't really do much for moving the inventory, but it is big. And when you look at the overall picture of sustainability and what's going on in the supply chain. So I think with all those things, you mentioned labor. One of the things that we see is that the warehouses are so full right now, right? That they're backing everything up and causing those problems. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, people are, they're having these containers and these chassis sitting at these warehouses, and that's creating a problem, right? Because everybody says there's no capacity, there's no chassis. Well, that's actually there's a lot of equipment and there's a lot of chassis, but they're all kind of stuck,
right,
in a certain place in the network. So with the intermodal, all of that extra capacity that you could throw at the DCs and get that product moving, you have to take advantage of that. And you have to just continue to figure out what are the different things that you can manage to try and keep that fluid movement, instead of when it stops and sits, that's what causes a problem in our network.
Well, and it's not just the capital cost of the goods, right? It's also you're getting dinged because you're getting, detention, demurrage, and then there's also all these extra charges for not being able to move the product or get the assets back and things like that, right? So
exactly.
On top of what you're talking about, there's all of these added costs that just, we've already been talking about inflation, or we haven't talked about inflation, but inflation is a big topic right now. And so you add that on top of what you're talking about. It's just not really feasible, right, Shelli?
No, that's exactly right. But, you got to remember the source of what those costs are. Those are the bad costs. Those are the accessorials, the things nobody wants to pay or do, but they're actually in there for a reason. They're in there to try and, entice people to keep it moving. But unfortunately, when everything gets backed up so far, then it becomes like a penalty and a negative situation with all those costs, because who's going to be responsible? That's the big thing, right? Think about all of the different hands that are in the intermodal supply chain, and those costs that you're talking about, just because there was a cog in the wheel. Think about all the different people in that, and who's going to be responsible. Everybody else says, wasn't me.
Right.
And so where do those costs lie, and who ends up with them? That creates a lot of anxiety and frustrations when we just need to keep it moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to play that blame game anymore. We had too much of that pre-pandemic.
That's right.
Donna, over to you. I'd like to give you the floor to talk about, this topic. What we haven't really talked about is technology too, right? That's got to be a big piece to the efficiency component within intermodal.
It does, and it has to be, and I'll tell you, we are scraping every website along the way for visibility. There's been real initiatives, and even in IANA, one of our biggest priorities is to focus in on this idea of digitization and how do we help visibility within our intermodal network. Our chairman, Noel Hasagaba, has been very, very helpful, and he has suggested to all of us, we're looking at an initiative, I believe they call it the Supply Chain Highway, Information Highway, where this whole concept, right, it's kind of cool. Today, we talk about each one of our segments is so siloed, and we've been very protective of our data. What can we do to share that data? So I'm going to give you a little insight on what it's like to be a motor carrier, to be that first mile, that last mile. And everybody, comes to us and they say, we want you to integrate with our platform. Oh, and by the way, we need the data in your ELDs, and we need this, we need that. That's, and here we are managing all that. And this concept, this information highway concept, is that we all will participate in one corridor in receiving this information. So really excited. I know, Noel has many participants that are now engaged in this initiative. IANA is looking at it to take it on. So that's a very positive step, because technology is key. I want to go back, though, to the conversation that you asked about, why intermodal? Mm-hmm. Scale. Scale. How many transload facilities can we really have in our gateways, right? Where's all this freight gonna go?
Yeah.
And we have to understand how exciting it is. I mean, I look at Chicago, I look at Kansas City, I look at Memphis, I look at Dallas, the ability for all these class ones to come in and provide these options to come east or west or north or south. This is, this is not only a viable option, it is a critical option. And, as a member and board member of IANA, we're watching, we're motor carriers, our whole, shall we say, business model is predicated on serving these major gateways, both port and rail. We're watching the deficit and the numbers decline, moving IPI. It's very, very concerning. As a member of IANA, this viable, needed, critical mode, how are we going to stand this up? Mm-hmm. And come together and creatively look at what's going on and make sure that we find ways to work together so that we can all breathe, so that it's working. It has to work. I look at Memphis alone. I don't know. I did a study, I guess it was about a year ago, 1,000 containers a day coming in and out by rail, 5 class ones. Wow. This is huge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so this whole concept of getting stuck, this is not an option. Back to you, Sarah. Plan B, C, D, E, and F, right?
Throughout the alphabet.
Ladies, we got to keep moving. And so, we talked a little bit. I am sincere. This whole concept of movement, we've got to rethink. We cannot do it one at a time.
Absolutely.
If you came into to one of those class ones today, they're still working one at a time.
Yeah.
How do we help and put our brains together to move? You talk about chassis. Shelli, you're spot on. There are simply not enough. How do we create business models that are optimal in helping us use the assets that we have in the most efficient manner, no restrictions? How do we do that? And so these are the kind of things that I think are exciting opportunities, but I think if we don't look at them and we don't address them spot on, all this scale that we're talking about, we get choked. So
yeah. Well, and we've got bigger boats coming down the line too, right? I mean, we haven't really spoken about that, but they are getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the year. And I was just in Germany with Hapag, and they're ordering, large vessels in large quantities. And so, it's not like there's really any relief. It's that we're going to be compounding what we're already doing right now. And so what really are those answers? And Donna, you said, we need a chance to breathe. Just a little. We need a chance to breathe to sort of figure this out. But what you're both also talking about is that we need collaboration within the intermodal industry, and not only hearts and minds, but also data sharing, right? And using that technology to sort of come together. One of the things that really affects efficiency from my research in intermodal is the risk of damage and things like that as well. So how do we get around that, Donna?
We use this intermodal option. I mean, that is the option. I mean, we do have, you talk about risk, we talk about damage. I actually serve on the IANA Safety Committee, and these are one of the things that we're looking at immediately. Interestingly enough, when we talk about safety too, one of the things this committee does is look at ways that we can use, again, data. Mm-hmm. From our rail sites, right? Where are accidents happening? How do we make perhaps even the lanes and things driver safe and friendly? All of this, again, going back to this viable option. How do we make sure that we are doing everything that we can to elevate all of these kind of issues that you're talking about?
Absolutely. I want to give a shout out to Sam over on my personal LinkedIn. She's loving the conversation, and appreciate you for being here. Now, I'm going to try to bring Tom up. He says that he can hear us, so I'm going to try it. We're going to try and see what happens. Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey! Hi, Tom.
Um,
Very
I,
exciting. We apologize for
I've
all
been
the
so
technology
excited
issues.
trying to get linked into this LinkedIn conversation. So I was able to hear the last question on security.
Yeah,
And
we're really talking about efficiency within intermodal right now. So if you want to give us maybe a little bit of an oversight on what you are seeing as far as the challenges in your part of the industry, and then what are some of the things that we should be thinking about to make it more efficient?
well, I mean, it's been an interesting year and a half as we've worked through supply chain challenges in this post-pandemic environment. But at the highest level, and as I was thinking about the conversation today, and I know you've talked a lot about all of these things, but I think about 3 C's of intermodal: cost, capacity, and carbon.
Yep.
And there's that encapsulates a big universe of the intermodal value proposition. And so certainly as we've gone through in this post-pandemic environment, the capacity that intermodal brings and the interconnected capacity of all of the players that are bound together to provide the service product have been really important. We know it's been a difficult go. We've all worked through challenges, but if you think about how much more challenging supply chains would have been without this intermodal service, to support the needs, it would have been much more difficult. And I want to give a quick comment on the security, if I can.
Yes,
I got
please.
connected late, but we hear from a lot of cargo owners that they really like the ability to we offer a bottom well loading, and so when that container is in the bottom well with containers on either side and container on top, that is the safest and it's the least ability to be compromised of any ground transportation. And so that's a special thing that we would offer to enhance the safety. But once it's in that bottom well loading program, it's very safe.
Yeah, and I think, it goes back to what we're talking about in collaboration is that everybody needs to do their part in different ways. But I want to touch on that third C that you said. We haven't really talked about carbon yet, right? And so talk to us about carbon as being maybe a challenge in intermodal right now.
Well, it's an opportunity, and really the opportunity starts with if none of the transportation service providers that are aligning to provide an intermodal service did anything different, there's a tremendous amount of carbon savings just from using intermodal as it exists today.
Right.
But then we know that all of the carrier partners that touch the rail, the ramp operators where that connection is made, and the rail operators, we all have carbon reduction targets as well. And even in the business process of using intermodal, there's further opportunities to leverage carbon reduction. So things like automated gate systems to reduce queuing times for drivers going into and out of facilities, electric cranes, electric hostler trucks, more efficient fuel usage, both on the motor carrier and on the rail side. All of us are doing things both to invest in lower carbon and capital investments, resources to lower carbon, but also business process to make that handoff more efficient and producing less carbon.
And being that sustainable option. I love that we're thinking about this as an industry, right? Shelli, I see you nodding your head all over the place. Do you want to step in here and just sort of elaborate on what Tom has brought to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tom, he really gave the full scope of it. I guess from our perspective on a 3PL side of it, we're kind of intermediary between the railroads and all the different divisions and the BCO, the shipper. And so it's very important for a lot of the shippers to make sure that they are able to show that they're using the green, the providers that have the green initiative, the carbon and everything else. So that's very important. But as you think about it, it's not just checking a box, right? Yes, they may check that box, but it's really globally what we need because, as we move on through all of this, these challenges in the pandemic and through the years, we really have to focus on that, or we're going to have bigger problems than extreme heat or hurricanes, right? So we really have to focus on that, and I think that's a very big component of the intermodal solution.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit more about sustainable options through intermodal and ESG goals and things like that. But one of the other key lessons I think that came out of the pandemic is agility. I think we've mentioned this already on this live stream. But as an industry, that room to flex and creatively problem solve is just increasingly, that key to survival in a difficult market. So let's talk about intermodal and the capacity it can bring to us. Shelli, do you want to start us off on that? Talk to us a little bit about what are some of the solutions around the capacity challenges that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the fun part, right? Because this is what we spend our livelihood doing, is trying to come up with creative solutions for the impossible. And we really kind of encountered the impossible. So as I mentioned before, that the fun part about this is that, if we can't find a solution with a 53-foot standard domestic box, well, okay, then let's go find a solution with a container. Let's go find a trailer. And right. then if there's a trailer option, then we can move that trailer on the rail. Okay, if there's not that trailer option, okay, let's go look for a 40-foot. If there's not that option, then we even took old 48s that were onion boxes out of retirement to move freight. I mean, there are so many options that you can move on the rail. That's what makes it an awesome mode of transportation, because you're not stuck with one solution. And you've got different railroads, different ramps, different routes. You've got all these wonderful partner dray carriers. So it's like this opportunity to always say yes to a customer versus say, nope, I don't have that one truck, that one trailer that can move that for you. Let me do this. And the other fun part about intermodal is think about the transload solutions too, right? So, I mean, it's intermodal is so much more than just the one move. It's everything put together, the ship coming in, whether it's going to be on dock or not on dock, whether it's going to be transloaded or not transloaded, then you're going to put it on a truck, or you're going to put it on a domestic container, then you got the trucks in the middle. Those are all the different things that being a 3PL, it's so much fun, because you get to have the partnership with all of them and help coordinate all of that to come up with this great solution. It makes you look really, really smart when you're not. So being a 3PL is amazing, because you can help the customer solve these impossible problems that look like a big old spider web when they encounter them.
Yeah, and I love your passion, and you talk about it kind of like this big old puzzle, right? You're sort of like putting the pieces where they need to go. I love that. So Tom, do you want to enter this part of the conversation a little bit? Because Shelli was talking about how flexible rail is. Tell us about that for agility purposes.
So, I mean, I think there's an optionality. We think about intermodal as like a mode, but really within intermodal, there are multiple ways you can access intermodal. So you can do IPI shipments and have an ocean container moving intact to an inland location. Import cargo can be transloaded into a 53-foot container. Within our domestic portfolio, the rail industry, various carriers offer different levels of service. Expedited and standard service, and so there's different speed options, there's different modal options, there's TOFC and COFC, and so all of that, and really we've seen supply chains flex into different parts of intermodal that better suits their needs as we've gone through this post-pandemic era of very strong transportation demand. And then I could not hear everything Shelli said, so if I don't want to repeat this, but there is as we think about capacity, we often think about the hard assets, the ramp capacity, the truck capacity, and so forth. But we're all challenged in this historic low unemployment level to hire people, and that's well documented.
Yeah.
The rail industries, we're working through our challenges, but at the end of the day, the best way to leverage the fewest number of people to move cargo across this country is getting it, into an intermodal service where you can have hundreds of units move on an individual train across the country. That lowers the people resource that's required to move the cargo.
Absolutely. So Scott, I see both of your questions, and Terry over on my personal LinkedIn as well. We're going to get to those questions in just a minute, but I want to bring Donna into this conversation and talk about some of the cost savings, because we haven't really talked about any of that, right? And all of these operational benefits are already fantastic in their own right, but the additional benefit really is the impressive cost savings. So Donna, talk to us a little bit about that.
I think the biggest cost saving that we've been able to share for our customers is in the area of demurrage, right? And that whole idea of being able to evacuate off the terminal, we had to make capital investment in land in these strategic locations. We had a place to go, but saving our customers millions and millions of dollars, and so it was there. I think if we want to talk about intermodal in general in terms of a cost saving opportunity versus transloading truck, how many touches? Yes, we are a huge proponent of IPI and OCP, to your point, Tom. We see this diversity in how we're moving cargo on the rail, not just traditional IPI through bills of lading, but also OCP, transload into domestic 53s, all of these options we're doing. Looking at look at even that cost per mile. Those are the efficiencies that are created through intermodal. Those are just some examples, right off the top.
Thank you for that. I think we're hearing a little bit of background noise on your side, Donna. So if there's people talking in the background, just let them know that we're live, maybe.
It's not me. I'm here by myself.
You're here by yourself. Maybe it's somewhere we're hearing some background noise. So I'm not entirely sure where that is, but Shelli or Tom, if you want to just check that for me. So Tom, I'm going to bring you back up to sort of talk about the cost savings portion.
Yeah, and part of it ties in back to the, you're consuming less resource. So, the underlying cost, the steel on steel efficiency of rail, the people efficiency. We know that there's an inherent cost advantage. I'll give a shout out to the Journal of Commerce. Ari Ash puts out a regular intermodal savings index, and I think the most recent number I saw was 37%. And I know he aggregates a lot of data. It's a good checkpoint for us to make sure that we understand the value proposition remains strong, and it is. And it's one of those 3 C's that I talked about earlier that is truly core to the intermodal value proposition.
Well, and I think Ayanna has some statistics, right? And those statistics state that 1.7 billion is saved in highway maintenance costs and 4.4 billion saved by shippers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm very glad you brought that up because there's a greater good element, and that probably isn't top of mind when you're thinking about the daily transaction of how do I move my freight or what's the benefit of intermodal. And really, you're using a well-capitalized private infrastructure for the most part, and that reduces the wear and tear and the tax dollar investment that's required to reinvest in the interstate highway system. And so, not only are we not putting as much carbon in the air, we're not burning as much fuel, we're reducing inflationary pressures on the environment, but we're also reducing the burden of the wear and tear on the interstate highway system when we leverage intermodal in a bigger way.
Absolutely. And so now let's talk a little bit about data. We kind of talked about it before you jumped on, Tom. But we should really talk about how timely and accurate data is absolutely vital for us to really move forward in the industry, right? So what does digitization within intermodal look like now, and how has that kind of changed?
So are you gonna, do you want me to start?
Sure. Yes, please.
I think this is, I like to think of intermodal as the world's biggest outdoor team sport. And so the coordination is really key, and the way our systems integrate is important. And we are making good progress, but there's a ton of opportunity because you have so many stakeholders in the ecosystem that need to plan together. And so, at the touch point level, we've done a lot of system integration work with the motor carriers that are entering our intermodal facilities. And so we've taken that from a manual process at the gate to the autonomous gate system, to an app-based system, to a point where we're trying to integrate our APIs into the dispatching system to make that driver experience at our hub better. I think, we think about all of the cargo that's coming into the West Coast ports that would touch our railroad, working on pathways to better integrate with both the terminal operators and the ocean carriers and the cargo owners, all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem to better plan to get that cargo moved more efficiently through those major nodes at the import gateways.
Yeah, because planning is huge. I mean, we were talking about the domino effect earlier in this conversation, and planning to make sure that that doesn't happen is really, really big. So, Shelli, I'm going to bring you back up on stage. How are 3PLs driving digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important because if you think about it, our customers are expecting us to have the Amazon effect, right? They need to
Right.
know exactly to the minute exactly where their cargo is. And when you look at intermodal with all the different touches that it goes through, it's very hard to have that opportunity. So as Donna was mentioning earlier, the initiatives that we're doing through IANA and other groups are doing, that Noelle is operating through, the initiatives that the railroads are doing to get us that much closer to keep having the visibility. It's really just a matter of getting everybody in the same data wavelength to be able to bring that to the customer. Because for us, I'll be completely honest, I think the intermodal product has a lot more visibility than even truck in most cases. But that's when it's on the rail.
Right.
Because the railroad is very, very good. I mean, we get so many waypoint notifications and so many updates on the rail. It's not even funny. So that is impressive. It's the fact that in the pickup and the delivery, we can use so many different providers. It's very hard to have that connection. It's a little bit of a gray spot on the front end and the back end. And as we bring that all the way together, that's when we're really going to get to that Amazon effect.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And that Amazon effect is real. I mean, they're going into drones anytime soon in California. So, Donna, I want to bring you back into the conversation as well. How has digitization, increased visibility, and a better flow of good data improving the industry as a whole?
Well, it's critical. And I think when you talk to all of us or any of us out there, they do, and we will always reference that black hole. And at the end of the day, people just want to know, where's my freight? And so, Shelli, even, your comment, and you're spot on. I mean, on the motor carrier side, because we all have to do our part in this area of digitization, and we can be the most sophisticated organization in the world. But as we continue to just, explode and move, and things get more complicated, how do we simplify the process? How do we streamline, as we talked about earlier, perhaps a corridor that can aggregate all of this data so that we're not all, feverishly programming in the background multitude of platforms? That's one. But as a motor carrier, we have ELDs and GPS in all of our trucks, our fleet trucks. But one of the phenomenons of the pandemic is that many motor carriers were moving to maybe their own motor carrier authority. And so what do you do with these smaller fleets? We are trying to create platforms so that we can bring these drivers onto the platforms to give them the sophistication. And Tom, much like you, development of an app. Why? To make that driver experience better and improve visibility, but also for the customer, the ultimate customer that wants to know, where is my freight at all times, right?
That's a big question.
Yeah. So the development of this app, so that as we created, as an industry, we saw them, pop-up yards, all of these, obscure and new locations. It becomes all about, where did that container go? Where is it? Where's my freight? Mm-hmm. And so us too, the development of app and applications and this ability to continue to push so that we can see throughout the supply chain where we are, so we can ultimately, Sarah, plan, right? So it's been a very hectic, sometimes exhausting, but continuous effort to just keep moving and stay on task in this whole realm of technology.
Absolutely. So now just a friendly reminder to everybody, we're going to get to your questions very, very soon. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments, and we're definitely going to get to those. And so today we've talked about the evolving landscape of the industry. We've talked about some of the many moving parts and their impacts. And it's clear that intermodal is a complex beast. And that's why IANA is so important, right? It is the only association bringing the entire intermodal freight supply chain together. And as I say collaboration is the future, and we've all talked about this today. But without IANA and the support and expertise it provides, Intermodal wouldn't be making the positive impacts on supply chain that it is right now. So each of you, I just want to ask you, why is IANA so important from the perspective of your company and industry sector? Shelli, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I would love to start off. For our company, here as a 3PL, IANA is very important because it is a single resource knowledge base to be able to tap into and understand what's going on in the current events within the intermodal space. But additionally, what's so important about IANA is we have a voice. There's one non-biased voice for all of the parts and pieces within our intermodal service. And IANA supports and can have that voice, whether it be a government issue, whether it be any kind of situation that's going on within the intermodal space. We have that central location that we can support that. And to, something personal to me and kind of hits me, as I said, on a personal level, is it's the basis of growing our future in IANA, right? So it's a knowledge base. We're supporting scholarships and programs for people that are in school to get excited about it, because literally playing with freight doesn't sound exciting when you're growing up. I'm
Why not? I mean, it did to me.
Yeah, I'm telling you, not too many people say they want to play with with boxes and playing trains and automobiles. As is a good movie, but it literally isn't something that people just think about. Oh, I'm going to go into that in a career. So the important part about IANA is getting in there while people are impressionable and young, and showing them how exciting this is, and bringing up our industry, so that way we can have a lot of really strong power team members and continue this forward.
Yeah, come together and be that one voice. Tom?
Yeah, so I said before that this is the world's biggest outdoor team sport, indoor.
I really like that.
We've got to bring all these players together, and I think that's the one thing that IANA does. I'm looking forward to being out at Expo in Long Beach in a few weeks, but this is, it connects us through data and information exchange. It connects us through collaboration. It connects us through education. And so, bringing all of the team members together to execute is really vital. And IANA is a really, really, really important part of that.
Absolutely. Donna, last but not least, and then we're going to get to our audience questions.
Well, I am such a fan of IANA, such a fan of Tom, Shelli, the board. What do we have? We have expertise. We have all the players, the critical players that sit around the same table, come to Expo. All modes of transportation are represented. And we have this amazing opportunity just to not just in thought or theory, but come together and do some real actionable and creative things. So I'm fired up, and I look forward to Expo, and I can't wait to see you all there.
I can't wait to see you either. So now let's get to our audience questions. So James asks, what do you think about a gray chassis pool in Chicago? Who wants to take that one? I don't know if maybe that's Tom.
Certainly happy to weigh in. I think one, we need to make sure that there's a coordinated effort to physically have enough hard asset chassis available relative to the containers that are coming in that those fleets support. So there's marine chassis and domestic chassis. I think this question would be more specific around marine chassis, and it's something that the rail industry has talked about for a long time. Some locations are less complicated than others, and Chicago is the most complicated connector node of any complex in the US. And so it has the most intermodal hubs, it has the most chassis migration issues. And so certainly there would be benefits that you'd have a universal chassis pool that's available for everybody, and that would be very efficient. But the complexity of bringing all of the stakeholders together in that community is the challenge. So it is top of mind. I think there would be benefit in that regard, and it's something that we have discussed for a long time and continues to be an opportunity on the horizon.
Yeah, keeping that discussion going. Okay, the second question is from Scott. Is there a proportion of transloading in or near to ports from ISO ocean boxes into domestic containers or out of DOM-COMs that would be optimal to improve throughput for the U.S. intermodal system today. Did you want to take that, Tom, or maybe Shelli or Donna?
I am happy to weigh in. I have
Okay,
thoughts
go
on
ahead.
this. And this is something that evolves over time. And so, you know, at any given moment in time, there is a fixed infrastructure that would, you know, optimizes how much could be loaded rail on dock and how much could be loaded transload. So historically on the West Coast, that's been about a third loaded on dock, a third transloaded, and a third is trucked or consumed locally. And those numbers fluctuate. But if they fluctuate too quickly, then you could have imbalances in the infrastructure that's available at any given moment in time. But I think what you'll see is the industry at large is investing. I would say the investments in the industry would predict that more transloading will happen as a percentage of that total. But to facilitate that, domestic container builds have to take place. The warehouse infrastructure continues to evolve in the Inland Empire to support that transloading and the rail infrastructure. And so I think all three of those stakeholder groups are making investments to support a growing percentage of transloading over time, because that's ultimately what cargo owners appear to be demanding. But if it shifts overnight, then you may not have the right capacity available to support that surge.
Yeah, it's really all about timing and planning. That's what we're talking about today, right? Timing and planning. So Terry has another question. Have they talked anything about getting relief from paying rail storage for import containers in a stack inaccessible by truckers? Shelli, do you want to take that one? Because I know from a 3PL standpoint, I mean, it's got to be something that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, we do deal with it on a day-to-day basis. The relief question is difficult because, you know, as I mentioned before, it really is whose responsibility is it? And those charges were ultimately put in place for a reason. Now, at some point in time, you feel like those get abused because it becomes a challenge. You know, everybody should have the best interest to get things out of the port and out of the terminals in a timely manner. But I will be the first to admit, being a 3PL, that there are a lot of roadblocks and challenges that prevent from being able to get that done. And when the charges continue to rack up, it becomes you know, well, who's going to pay for that? And why should I have to pay for that when I didn't cause that problem? And why, you know, and where does that responsibility lie? So I know that things are being looked at in all facets. I mean, you've got all kinds of different charges that we're talking here. You know, you've got railroad charges that they charge. You've got terminal and port charges that they charge for not coming out at a timely manner. You got your truckers who they take up their valuable yard space. So they're going to charge you charges for their valuable yard space. So it all comes back to what we talked about before is, I mean, there's always constant discussions through all the different divisions of the intermodal chain of how we can get relief and do better in regards to those accessorials. But in the end of the day, if things are moving the way they need to move, then you shouldn't be encountering those charges. So it's a very big juggling act, and we deal with it on a daily basis because sometimes it really does just seem unfair.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you so much, Shelli. Scott's got another question. There are a number of international members of this audience. What engagement with shippers or consignees outside of the U.S. can improve throughput for the North American intermodal system? Donna, did you want to take this one?
So this is really, really interesting because I think we have so much that we can learn from each other. Right. And one of the things, I mean, we were just talking about it yesterday as we talk intermodal. Intermodal means multi-modes. Look at our European partners. How have our European partners managed the chassis issue? How have our European partners used their inland waterways as real viable options to intermodally move cargo? I mean, this is fascinating. You know, are there areas of opportunity that we can, you know, I want to go with you, Sarah, the next time you go to Europe. I got my hand up. I want to go to Hamburg. I want to go to Germany too, because I think we can just look, listen, and learn, right? So just yesterday, again, just talking about this whole concept of intermodal and options and inland waterways. What can we learn from the Europeans? What can we learn from our counterparts in the globe? So I think it's a great question. And I think the answer is we can learn a lot.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. And I think we can all share information, right? We can learn a lot from them. They can learn a lot from us. And we can only go up from there, I think, right?
Right.
So Alfonso has a question here, and I think this might be going to Tom. Any thought you may have for container chassis built on a road rail rolling asset concept, seeking to expedite transit times as well as less container handling costs? Tom, did you want to take this one?
Yes, and I may I hope I don't misanswer the question, but I do think there's definitely been a disconnect between the supply chain for inbound containers that are being built to support growth in the U.S. and the kind of the dislocation of chassis manufacturing away from China. So that's created timing issues where you have more containers than chassis. We do think that is moderating with domestic U.S. production. There's several plants that have come up. We anticipate is going to come back into balance by the end of the year. And then you're going to have asset pools in both containers and chassis that match efficiently. And you'll see that kind of that dislocation of those two resources diminish as the year progresses.
Great. Thank you for that. And so intermodal is an easy win for sustainability. We kind of touched on sustainability earlier, but I want to ask you guys really quickly, it's something that companies can implement now that will bring operational benefits as well as meet some of those ESG goals. So Tom, can you talk a little bit more about what intermodal brings to help organizations sort of meet those ESG goals?
Yeah, and so certainly I think the awareness has never been higher, and the pressure of realizing that benefit of carbon reduction has never been more urgent, with so many companies that are thinking about their opportunities in their supply chain. So we certainly offer the opportunity to measure the carbon reduction associated with shipments in the intermodal space, and so those carbon calculators are out there. And just kind of informing the shipping public on the true benefit and how much carbon you can take out of the air by converting an over-the-road shipment into an intermodal shipment.
Well, and I think the IANA website states that 2.3 billion gallons of fuel is conserved, 100,000 less heavy trucks on highways, and 25 million tons of CO2 emissions eliminated. Those are pretty big stats.
It's huge. It's a 75% reduction if you just take a long haul over the road move to an intermodal move, the same distance, same 2 points, convert that to intermodal. You're looking at a 75% reduction, and then all of the efforts, as I mentioned before, of this stakeholder community to further reduce their carbon output as we provide that intermodal service further leverages that benefit down.
Yeah, that is huge advantage, for your ESG goals, sustainability plans, all of those kinds of things. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now I would like to leave the audience with one takeaway, something that they should leave thinking about, maybe putting into action, something like that. Donna, I'm going to start with you. What's the one takeaway you think the audience should walk away from this discussion with?
I really encourage the audience to really be mindful about intermodal, about the critical need to preserve and elevate this mode. We've been talking about it now, and we've been talking about the necessity, the critical need, the options, the scalability. And I just ask you, if you're sitting in Chicago, you're sitting in Dallas, you're sitting in Kansas City, be mindful of those class ones coming in. Multi-modes, how do we continue to perfect, engage, and support the system as stakeholders coming in? And that's what I'll leave you with.
Great share. Thank you. Tom, one final takeaway.
So final takeaway, I know this has been a tough year and a half, 2 years. We've all been through a lot together. And this is we work together to provide this service, but I am so optimistic about the future. The future of intermodal is bright. The value is strong. The investments that all of the carriers in this mode are making to bring more capacity. I can't wait for 2023 to be here.
Great.
It's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Shelli, last but not least, what's your one takeaway from this discussion for the audience today? And you are, Great.
Yeah, I think the one takeaway is, we're all in it for the same end goal, right? Everybody from the shipper to every stakeholder in this is in it for the same goal. So as we continue to progress and we digitize and we do all this technology and we do everything else, don't forget the component of relationship and communication. That's what I see in the intermodal space and through IANA is it's all about communicating, collaborating, and working together. And I think I'm a huge fan of technology, and we want to get it to the point and hit that Amazon effect, but don't lose the personal touch. And because in the end of the day, people just want to know where their freight is, because that's what keeps everything keeps everything going. So that's for me, that's the takeaway is communicate and collaborate and keep using intermodal, and would love to see you at Expo.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for those final words. I actually don't think as an industry we talk about intermodal enough, and it's been a real pleasure to dive deeper into the industry today and shine a light on the potential intermodal has to genuinely improve supply chain. And we've only had time to scratch the surface. The Intermodal EXPO, September 12th through 14th in Long Beach, California, is going to dive even deeper into all of these issues we've touched on today. Over 90 companies will be there exhibiting to share how they're supporting the growth of intermodal. There will be some incredible speakers talking about everything from how to address the driver shortage to the role of data transparency. And I'll be there too, interviewing exhibitors and attendees. It's a real must-attend event, especially now that we can get back to in-person events. I've been to a few already and nothing compares, so I hope to see you there. A big thank you to Tom, Shelli, and Donna, and of course, IANA for making this live stream happen. If you'd like to find out more or register for Expo, head over to intermodal.org. And of course, thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it's really got you thinking about how to utilize the benefits of intermodal within your own business. Please do reach out to any of us on social media if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to share. And remember, day 2 of the Intermodal Summit is coming at you same time next Thursday, and we will see you for that one because we're going to be diving into intermodal insights and trends. Don't forget to tune in, and thanks again to Tom, Shelli, and Donna.